welcome to joining our November Ask Me Anything session on the topic Efficiency Without Risk, how Sigrid aids developers in the age of AI. I'm Mark Groot, Customer Success Manager at the Software Improvement Group and host of our Ask Me Anything series. And today I am welcomed by our AI rock star, Bruno. Bruno, want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Yes, sure. Thanks for the nice intro, Mark. So my name is Bruno. I'm a senior developer here at SIG, working in our AI team. So we are basically a team with a couple of more colleagues. We focus on working with AI, improving Sigrid with AI, and we have been using this technology quite extensively. And so this AMA will hopefully help all of you getting more familiar with this technology, how you can use it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start our first poll. So I'm going to launch it now. And that should be coming up on your screen. So are you already using coding assistants? We want to understand kind of where you are in your journey, because we talk with a lot of customers on a day-to-day practice. And we see that some are using it very actively, some of them not so much. We also know there's some regulatory policies and certain companies that don't really allow for it. So we want to understand kind of where you are in your journey, because that will also help us in how to talk about it today. So I see that some people have filled it in, not everyone yet. So I'm going to give it a little bit, give it a minute more. And in that minute, I'm going to also explain kind of the rules of engagement, or how do we make today interactive, and how can you ask your questions also to Bruno. So in the middle of your screen at the bottom, there is the Q&A panel. In the Q&A panel, you can ask questions. We very much recommend you to ask questions. I will be moderating those. I will be monitoring the screen, the questions that are coming in, and I will be asking them to Bruno like throughout the session. So he will share the first 15, 20, 25 minutes, a little bit of a story about kind of where, about AI, where we see the trends going, and how Sigrid, our software platform, helps specifically developers, but also we'll talk a bit about the future as well, how Sigrid helps developers in the age of AI. So if you have questions, do ask them through the Q&A sort of button in the bottom. Okay, so I see that almost everyone has filled it in. So I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. So we see that the vast majority of the people here in this call are actively using coding assistants, or at least their teams are potentially also as well. And it's obviously something that we hear a lot, right? So we hear a lot of people and a lot of our customers and a lot of companies, and you see a lot of things on the internet also about software teams and organizations using coding assistants actively. And we think that's great because it obviously can benefit, or it can generate productivity wins. But obviously there are some risks involved. And today we'll talk about that, and Bruno will talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to stop sharing. There's one more slide that I wanted to share before I'm going to kind of hand the reins to Bruno. That's essentially an overview of all of the sessions that we've had, all of the previous Ask Me Anything sessions that we've had up until so far. Today will be the last Ask Me Anything session of the year. So if you have any interest in looking back, or any interest in the topics that we discussed earlier this year, there are recordings available, and they are on the Software Improvement Group website. So from there you can kind of navigate and then watch back the recording. But with that said, I want to hand over to Bruno to talk about how Sigrid helps developers with AI.
Yes, thanks, Mark. We can indeed move on. So really interesting to see, and also happy to see the results of our first question, that people are actively experimenting and using coding assistants. So hopefully you'll get a lot of value out of this AMA session. And yeah, we have prepared a little sort of small roadmap of how to manage and use AI nowadays. We'll also talk, of course, about the offering that we have currently, which is an MCP server. We'll also look a little bit in detail into that. Also, we'll offer some nice prompt engineering techniques that we have seen that tend to work well. Then there will be a small demo of using the Sigrid MCP server on kind of a toy example, just for everyone to see how to use it, how to set it up, and how efficient it is. And we'll wrap up by looking a bit ahead, so at what is coming to Sigrid and to the Sigrid platform in this age of AI. So as Mark said, of course, if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the Q&A box, and we can, of course, go over them. So let's move on. So the first topic that is, of course, important and nice to mention is that AI generated code has really been on the rise. So it has been being more and more adopted and produced by many different teams, many different companies, using many of the different offerings available. And actually, this is a chart from Dora report from this year that actually states that we have had a 14.1% increase on AI usage compared to last year, which is, of course, quite significant. And we see that over 90% of the respondents of this survey made by Dora report that they are actually using AI. So it's actually aligning with also your current practices. It's also more interesting even to see that many people claim to use it very, very often. So over half of the time, it's quite a lot. Let's say for every couple of tasks you do, you just delegate one of them to AI. So the reliance on AI tools and AI generated code is really on the rise, which makes it super important to ensure code quality. So let's move on.
Yeah, so I think we also had a poll here, right? Not a poll question. I'm actually, kind of looking at this
exactly.
and understanding from the like based on the previous question. I'm also curious to know like how the percentage in the audience would have changed if you would have asked this question a year ago. But that's not the poll question that we prepared. The poll question that we prepared is: do you think that based on how you currently work, you are more productive or efficient with your use of AI? Because also there, in our conversations with customers, or the conversations that I have with customers, the answers differ vastly about whether they see those productivity increases or those gains, compared to certain customers actually saying the other way around, that while it does offer some efficiencies in the coding part itself, those gains are essentially negated by the additional checks that need to happen afterwards.
Yeah, definitely.
And I see that a lot of people have filled it in, so I'm just going to start ending the poll and share those results back to you. Because while there is a clear sort of winner emerging, it's not as high of a percentage as compared to the first question. Kind of customers saying that, or people saying that they use it actively, but not all of them are saying that it like fully 100% makes them more efficient and productive.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a nice nuance, I think, nice to mention, is that obviously there is this perception, especially for developers and people who are actively using it. You can feel that you are more productive, but indeed, as you mentioned, with all the extra checks, reworks, and compliance issues, etc., then you can actually find that it doesn't really make you that more productive. So a lot of it can be more perceived instead of actually being real productivity, which is also interesting to discuss.
Great.
Yeah, can move on.
So maybe, Bruno, I have a question for you. Does it make you more productive in your work?
Yeah, I would say so. Or well, at least I think I am more productive while using it, right? As we mentioned. But yeah, I would say so. Especially for technical work, and for developers, it's actually a very interesting tool, especially to exchange ideas, right, and discuss different approaches to a given problem, etc. So it's not really the act of writing the code itself, but everything else around it. I definitely feel that it definitely helps me out. So definitely very nice. Yeah. Okay. Can move on. So indeed, as we mentioned, so there is a lot of productivity gains, efficiencies to be exploited, etc. But of course, also a very important aspect, which kind of tends to be a little bit forgotten sometimes, but it's of course critical, is that it's super important to be able to measure the quality of code that is being written or co-authored with AI, of course. And yeah, the thing is, this is of course a problem in the sense that with AI, as we already discussed, it can be really, really great in terms of output and generating code reports, not only for developers, right, Mark? So I can imagine that other technical roles like consultants, etc., they can also benefit a lot of using AI assistants. So tasks that would take weeks can now be done in days, which of course feels like a boon, but there is a hidden issue, of course, is that it puts a lot of pressure on the development teams, because the idea is that teams tend to sort of stay the same. They just sort of flip a button and magically become more productive. So produce much more code much more quickly. But there is all process around it, like reviews, onboarding new people, making sure that quality is up to a certain standard, compliance issues, infrastructure, etc. And all these things, AI can't help with any of this, right? So AI can be great to write a lot of code, but for the whole software development lifecycle, there is still a lot of gaps that AI would need to fill in to be really useful. So what is the approach or the solution that we propose here? The solution is indeed so not to try to fight against the scale, let's say, not to try to fight against it, right? It's like trying to surf against the wave that just doesn't work. But instead, we can make sure that for all this new code that is being co-authored and generated with AI, that we have a surefire way, so a foolproof way to make sure that the quality and the security compliance is up to the standard. And that is the proposition behind our MCP server that we have developed here within the AI team. Indeed. So I think we also have a nice question now, another poll question coming up.
Yeah, that's indeed. We have another question is about, like, Bruno already introduced MCP, but the question is, have you heard about MCP? What it is? Are you using it at all? It's obviously one of these words that 2 years ago weren't really kind of known in the public. And all of a sudden, especially in the last, I would say, year-ish, this year has gotten a lot of hype. And it's sometimes hard to cut through that hype, right? You hear on LinkedIn, you see on LinkedIn all of these articles about all of these customers and then these development teams using it, but how many are actually using it? So that's also a question that we're wondering and asking to the audience here.
Yeah, very curious to see the results.
Yeah. Great. I think that there's a lot of people that have answered it. So I'm just going to close the poll.
Yeah.
And share the results.
Yes. Okay. Very
so
nice.
What do you think of this, Bruno? Does that kind of reflect with what you've been seeing and hearing from from your work?
Yeah, definitely. I would say it's even maybe a tiny bit higher than I expected, which is of course great. So yeah, this is really interesting because of course MCP is a very modern technology. So it first appeared, I think it was around middle of 2024. So as you can see, it's, let's say, around a year old, a year and a few months old. So it's like, in terms of tech history and standards, it's extremely new. But at the same time, it's super interesting and super useful, because the idea is that LLMs in their current form, they can only receive and output texts and nothing else. So that's why they're called large language models. So it's really only about text. But of course, the real benefit and the biggest improvements in usability would be if these models, while being able to generate text, could also do something on the user behalf. And I think everyone in this call and everyone in the industry at large already experienced this. So probably everyone has used ChatGPT by now. And I personally still remember, I think you might also remember, Mark, that at a certain point, ChatGPT, they introduced this possibility of searching the internet, right? Which is amazing because, all of a sudden, you could just ask a question, and instead of the LLM hallucinating something, they could just go to the internet and give you the right information, which is super nice. Yeah, and yeah, for me it was also completely like a wow moment. It was really amazing, and that also revealed something interesting. Is that the great thing about LLMs is that they can do so much more when you give them what is called tools. So you can look at this in terms of an analogy. Let's say, yeah, if you like to do some carpentry work, you need a hammer if you need to nail something. So you become, infinitely more efficient to hit a nail if you use a hammer, right? And for an LLM, the idea is the same. They can already do a lot, so you can just send messages to them, get back an answer, and it feels like magic. But it's even better if you say, indeed, oh, I would like to know how the weather is in Lisbon tomorrow. And instead of the LLM just, hallucinating something, it will say, oh, let me search the internet for you. So this is what a tool is. And essentially, at a very high level, MCP is nothing else but a protocol to standardize how large language models can discover and use tools like this. Yeah, and of course, as it will become very obvious, if you are using coding agents or assistants like Copilot, Cursor, etc., all of that, it's only possible thanks to this capability of using tools. So yeah, this is why it's really important to have the capability to craft tools that can cater to your workflows, and this is what we have done. Yes. So with Sigrid and with our MCP server, so what's called the Sigrid MCP server, the very simple idea is that there is a flow where through an agentic IDE, as you know, Cursor or Windsurf or IntelliJ, whatever you like. So there is now endless amounts of these agent IDEs. We have managed to expose some tools that the LLMs can use in those IDEs that allow you to actually analyze the quality of your code, both for maintainability issues and for security issues as well. So imagine having the power of Sigrid directly integrated with an LLM. That sounds super nice, right? And now it's possible thanks to MCP.
So one question that I have had in the past, and I haven't seen it necessarily in the chat yet, but I can imagine is like, shouldn't like why don't these IDEs or these LLMs have sort of these quality and security checks themselves when they generate the code itself? And what would be your answer to that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So the thing is, to a certain extent, these models, they are basically trained across the whole internet, right? Or the corpus of training, it's assumed to be like the entire internet. So obviously, what happens is if you have a code snippet and you ask an LLM like Claude or ChatGPT, like, hey, are there any issues in this code snippet? Of course, you will get something back, and a lot of the times it can even make sense and it can even flag a lot of issues. But there is a fundamental flaw in this process, and this is why the MCP server is so important, is that the texts and the output that the LLMs produce is not deterministic, right? So what happens is these models work as very large probability machines, and essentially what happens is they receive some input, and based on that input, they just try to calculate what is the most likely thing that they would need to say. But of course, that is not enough for ensuring real code quality and security, right? Because obviously, what if one day the LLM comes up with a vulnerability that is not there, or what if it starts hallucinating issues? That could become a serious problem.
Yeah, I was in like earlier today. I had a conversation, and there a great analogy was used that at least stuck with me, where it was like, okay, if you compare it to self-driving cars, right? I mean, it's an example that is being used a lot.
Yeah,
Something is 98% or 99% safe, or are you not? If you're 99% sure that you're not getting in a car crash,
yeah,
that still means that 1 out of 100 times there's a car crash is going to happen.
yeah,
Are you safe? Do you feel safe kind of keeping your hands completely off the steering wheel and
yeah,
not paying attention to traffic anymore? Right?
exactly,
And I
exactly.
think that's the same here because they're both
Yeah,
like because they're both non-deterministic.
yeah,
Even if there's a high probability,
yeah,
because the potential repercussions are so bad, and the same with security incidents that can sneak into your code.
yeah,
You want to have ironclad control.
exactly. Yes, we don't accept anything less than 100%, right?
Exactly.
And indeed, that is the guarantee that a technology like the Sigrid MCP server can give you. And that is why this protocol is so powerful and so useful, and so widely spread across the industry nowadays.
Fantastic.
And then of course we can move on. So of course we discussed already a lot, talked about MCP, LLMs, the importance of code quality. So all of that is key, and these are basically the core principles that will never change. But nowadays, of course, there is kind of a new sort of science emerging that is called prompt engineering, which is basically a fancy term for how to efficiently talk and extract the most information out of these large language models. So not only related to AI coding assistants, but LLMs in general. There is this kind of engineering discipline appearing. And the idea, of course, I think people in the audience will definitely relate, but if you have used any coding assistant or a large language model, you probably already identified that the more vague you are in what you answer, the higher the probability of hallucinations or you getting back an answer that totally doesn't contain the information that you really needed. Right? And that is why, it feels a bit for some people like kind of a pseudoscience. So well, it's not really engineering; it's just writing text. But at the same time, there are some tips that we have seen ourselves at SIG and yeah, also from the industry at large, that can make it much more. Yeah, it can make working with these AI coding assistants a much more enjoyable experience. So if you know someone who is a bit of a skeptic person, you can definitely reference this and experiment with this, and I'm sure that things will be much better. So we have yeah, four tips for you here, especially in the context of coding assistants, and you will see a short demo later where I'll show some of these. So the idea is that AI coding assistants are much more powerful than your regular LLM in your browser because they can have context about your code and your code base, and that is what makes them so powerful. So of course, the first tip I have is that if you need to, you know, zoom in into some specific file or a specific component that is problematic, you can dynamically bring it to the context window on demand, let's say, with the @ symbol. So most agentic IDEs support this syntax to pull in files that are relevant to a given task directly into the context, which is really nice. Then the other point, of course, that I already mentioned is that it's nice to be specific about what you want. This is also the part where I think we as with Sigrid and at SIG can really help, is that a large language model and AI in general, it's not a replacement for real knowledge, right? So you really need to know what you need and what you want, and you need to leverage your expertise to get the most out of these assistants. So this is a very simple example, of course, but yeah, it's typical to see prompts like, oh, I would like to improve this code snippet. And then, of course, the LLM will do something. Maybe you will get a better version, or maybe not. But what if the thing that you had in mind when you wrote it was actually, oh, I see that I have a very specific class in here that, yeah, it has a very large method in there. Should we split it into smaller ones? So if you really codify your intentions in a prompt, you can get much better results. So that is definitely something that we recommend. And then finally, yeah, it's about ensuring that you keep that you work only on a single task at a time. So don't try to do many things at once, because that will only confuse the AI. And it's the same with your fellow colleagues, I can imagine. So trying to focus on self-contained single tasks works the best. And obviously, yeah, you can iterate, experiment, try things out.
So Bruno, I was at an event a few weeks back where someone used a perfect analogy for this about
Yeah.
prompt engineering. He said that, I talk to my AI and my coding assistant like I'm talking to my 5-year-old. If I
Oh,
tell
yeah.
my 5-year-old, clean the house, something will happen, but I
Yeah.
have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Whereas if I tell them, wash this plate or
Yeah.
take out the trash
Yeah.
or something very deterministic like that single task that you talked about, then I
Yeah.
know what he's going to do, and he can be he can be a great help.
Yeah.
So I think that
Definitely.
what stuck with me is, okay, I need to be talking to my AI coding assistant like a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, that's a great analogy, right? And it's actually it's an even better analogy, because with that analogy we can take it further. So if you ask a 5-year-old to wash your plate, you can probably expect that something will happen to the plate, but it can also break, right?
Yeah.
So that is basically indeed like that's the current state. So it can get washed, or it can break, or it can be put somewhere else. So of course, yeah, indeed it's a nice analogy, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, these are basically our 4 very simple recommendations. So use your context windows efficiently, be very specific to get the best possible results, and then just iterate, experiment, try things out, and then you'll definitely get a nice result.
Well, now I'm curious to see it in action, Bruno.
Definitely. Yeah, and I have indeed a small demo prepared. So let me see if I can pull it up. Oops.
You're already sort of giving a sneak peek about kind of the future stuff.
Yeah, I think I needed to stop sharing because I have my editor in here.
No worries. I can imagine that giving demos with MCP or with generative AI are always a little bit more tricky compared than like the traditional demos, because then you kind of have a bit more control about what's happening, right?
Yeah, definitely. Let me pull my screen. This is it. Share.
I see some first questions coming in that I'll ask when Bruno has done his first sort of prompt. But if you do have questions about anything that Bruno and I are talking about, don't forget to, with the Q&A button, ask your questions. Also, if you want him to do something else that he hasn't during the demo, to try it out, I want to also challenge Bruno there. So if you have
Of course, yes,
questions,
definitely.
do not be shy.
Exactly, definitely. So yeah, I have prepared a very simple example just to illustrate some of the capabilities of our MCP server. So I'm sure that some of you might recognize that this is Cursor. So Cursor is one of the leading, if not the most popular agentic IDE that's out there at the moment. And it has support for MCP. And that is what I'll be showing. So for those of you who don't know, the way it works is that there are kind of 3 panels in here. There's your project on the left, like your standard IDE. You have your code in the middle. And on the right, we have the magic, which is a small chat window here, where we can interact with various large language models, ensure that MCP servers are being used, for example, and many other things. So yeah, I have an example here of a very simple encryption algorithm here, and just some demo class in here. And so there are some vulnerabilities in this code snippet. So, and we'll see which ones they are really soon. But how will we do that? We will do that using the Sigrid MCP server. So first, we need to configure it. And to configure MCP servers in these agentic IDEs, there is a very popular standard that is now appearing, which is to have a file called mcp.json that typically comes bundled with your IDE when you install it. And then to configure it, you just need this little bit of JSON code in here, where you can give a name to your MCP server. You have the URL for the actual MCP server. So this is basically a remote MCP server hosted by ourselves. And then in our case, we of course need some authorization where you would use your Sigrid token. So you just have to log in into Sigrid. You would generate a token. And then if you put it in here, you would be able to connect to the MCP server. And then, of course, it would work. So I have done that previously. So I have it up and running. And you can see that in the settings of the editor, there is a tab called MCP here. There's a small tab in here, and you can see that our MCP server is up and running in here. So it has the name that we gave it. So Code Guardrails, that's the name that we decided to give our MCP server. And in our case, we have one single tool in our server that we called Code Quality Guardrails. So just a small remark before I continue. Obviously, it's nice if the names of your tools and servers can reflect what task they plan to accomplish or they want to accomplish. So the reason for that is that the large language models will use this information, and the more contextual you are, the easier it can be. So this is of course very nice. You can also see I'm hovering it now over our tool name, and we have added some description in here that explains what the tool does and what it will generate and output. This information is, of course, also going to be used by the LLM to make sure that it's as efficient as possible.
Do we does this information come kind of pre-installed, so to say, or can we otherwise share that with customers so that they also have this kind of description?
No, this description comes pre-installed, which is nice. So people just connect to our MCP server and they will get this description out of the box.
Fantastic. There's a few questions coming in, so I'm wondering, shall we maybe do one example first, and then I have a number of questions that I want to
Indeed.
go over? Because otherwise we keep teasing the audience too long, right?
Exactly. So let's move on then. So indeed, as I mentioned, so I know that there is some potential vulnerabilities in this code snippet, but I don't know exactly what. So let's say as a developer, I can have a suspicion, right? Or I know that something is not right here. So we can use Sigrid MCP to zoom in on this. So let's see, we can now come up with a prompt and I can follow some of the techniques that I outlined in the presentation. So I'll just say, I would like analyze the method, and then this will be the method. So of course, these prompts can be customized and tweaked as you see fit, but this is just an example to see how it would work in action. So I would like to analyze the meta encrypt data in the, and now I can use the @ symbol to actually mention the specific file where I think the vulnerability is. So you will see that it will even highlight it as a file in here. So this is really powerful. I would like to analyze the meta encrypt data for potential security issues using the, and then we can give the name of our server, which in this case is Code Guardrails in here. So I can just say code. Yeah, see, it even offers me to autocomplete it. Code Guardrails MCP server. So this is obviously a very specific prompt. You can immediately see that cursor now wants to run the tool. I'll just allow it. Obviously, yeah, this is one of the ways to interact with an MCP server. Then, of course, you can craft very complex flows with this, yeah, there are different approaches to this, but you can see that it's nice. So it gave us a response in here where it produced security results. So you can see that it flagged that there are some hard-coded keys in here. Hard-coded encryption key makes symmetric encryption useless, etc. And then it also flagged some other issue below regarding how to call it. So you can see that we successfully identified 2 issues with our MCP server, which is really great. that otherwise a standard large language model probably wouldn't have managed to find. And from this point on, within this conversation, of course, now this is all within the context of the LLM, and it can help to fix it, right? So now we could go and say, focusing on the results of the analysis, let's fix the code. Then what we'll see is that, of course, it will now take into account the deterministic, don't forget, that's very important, the deterministic results produced by our analysis tools. And it will just start looking at the code, planning a fix for the specific vulnerabilities, and if anything, it would even want to run some tests or compile the code if needed. So you can see that the agents by themselves, they can do a lot. They are very eager to write code, basically. But the advantage is with the Sigrid MCP server, you make sure that the code complies with your quality standards and with your security standards. So that was the demo.
Yeah, so I have a whole bunch of questions because people always like, the technicality. So
Yeah.
I'm going to start answering them there and trying to bundle them as well wherever possible.
Yes.
So the first one is, would you have a documentation listing all MCP methods? Is there any key difference compared to Sigrid APIs? On its own, having these APIs exposed as MCP is very valuable, but I want to understand if I can expect more.
Yeah, so yes and no. So basically, there are different purposes to using an MCP server or simply, exposing an API. So part of the difference is that our APIs are made to be really tightly integrated with our terminology, like specific types of findings, really tied to our quality models, etc. While the MCP server, it also uses our tools, of course, under the hood, but it's made more generic in a way that it just looks at the code in a more general way. So it's not so much tied to our terminology. So you can probably combine, or let's say mix and match inputs and outputs in a different way that simply using the APIs wouldn't allow you.
Yeah, and there's another two questions that I'm going to bundle.
Yeah.
Because they're both related to the token. So are you
Yes.
planning to support browser authentication flow instead of having to create a token? That's the first question. And the second question, which is related to the token, it's a bit of a different question, but I think I figured I might be group it, is
Yeah.
what is the minimum permission required for this token? Is it admin, maintainer, or read permission? And I think the token is then the Sigrid token as well.
Yeah, indeed. So all you need is a Sigrid token. So if you can, within the platform, if you yourself can create a token, you can just use it and it will work. So
is that for any user, or you need to be admin or maintainer to be able to do that?
I think it's in our public documentation. There is a section about who can create tokens. But essentially, if you have the permissions within your organization to create a token, then you can use it and it will work.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try to find the documentation and then link that back to the user, and then maybe you can talk about the support browser authentication flow instead of the.
That is currently on our roadmap. So we are still experimenting with this technology and with the MCP server. But indeed, we will probably investigate and look into supporting different authentication flows going forward.
And then another question that we got is, to what extent can we agentize some of these things that we've seen? So, and I'm trying to relate that to something that I've seen in a previous demo. So I believe we can also sort of automate some of these steps that you showed, right? Kind of that for every code generation, it automatically runs the MCP server instead of having to necessarily manually trigger it. So to what extent
Yes.
can we
Yes.
agentize sort of like if because a lot of like AI agents? So
Yeah,
like what
definitely.
what extent can you create sort of a secret agent within your ID?
Yeah, I think that is already possible nowadays. I can actually reshare my screen quickly just to showcase this. Let me pull it up. This one, this one. Yes. So it is already possible because, and this is also something worth mentioning, is that essentially what nowadays is called an agent is nothing more than an LLM executing itself on in a loop with access to tools, right? So essentially, if you have an LLM that can use tools, you are already 90% of the way to building an agent. Um, and currently, so the standard practice for doing this in these IDEs, it's to do something that's called rules in Cursor. So I don't know the terminology if it's really the same for every type of agentic client, let's say. But essentially, there are these rules in here where essentially you can edit this and you can add some sort of guidelines and directives to your agent to make it like truly autonomous. But that, of course, depends a lot on your use case, on the type of code you are working with, and how comfortable you feel also in letting the LLM sort of run free, so to say. And obviously, also very important to mention is that this works the best if you are using the latest state-of-the-art LLMs. So an LLM like maybe ChatGPT 5 or Sonnet 4 or Sonnet 4.5 will produce much, much better results than if you use a smaller model or an older model. But essentially, the idea to turn LLM calls into an agentic workflow, at least nowadays, it's based on these rules where you can just type the sort of directives that you want the LLM to follow. And hopefully, yeah, if the model is very good, they will do it. But it's not something that can be like fully enforced. And then, of course, you could do that, but then you would have to be back into writing code manually, let's say, and that would be back to square one, so to say.
So what I remember from one customer where I've seen it is that they've said that any time that code is generated, that they
Yeah,
want to ensure or they ask the Sigrid MCP to ensure it has at least 3.5 stars maintainability.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so that's one way that you can start to automate some of these checks
yeah,
while you're generating code. And I thought
exactly.
that was very cool.
Yeah,
Obviously, we can, if you're interested in things like this, so how to best instruct the Sigrid MCP, please also feel free to reach out to our team
yeah,
once you start building it, because we can share also our best practices there, and maybe we can even share some I don't know, like paragraphs
yeah,
on best practices. Um,
definitely.
Great. So seeing a few other questions. Oh, there's a large one, so I'm going to try to read it fully, and then also be great to also pull up the final slide.
Yeah.
There is a trend about spec-driven development or agent plans. Are you planning to provide an MCP method that would provide a curated list of top and recommended changes depending on objectives? So
Um,
top X actions to maintainability as an example.
yeah, indeed. It is on our roadmap for our team. It's not yet started, but it is on our roadmap, and we plan to then yeah, indeed, integrate some of our APIs within MCP to create a more as it was mentioned, a more integrated experience where you can get much more tailored recommendations that you can directly act upon in your code. Yeah, that is still yeah, it's on our roadmap, and I think somewhere during next year, 2026, we will definitely start working on this.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Maybe the final question I have here is the MCP server limited to methods, or does it also provide embedded prompts?
No, currently it's only limited to methods. Methods or classes, and we don't yet provide embedded prompts. But if there is interest, it's definitely something worth exploring, and I can definitely bring it back to my team, and we can see what we can do about that.
All right. Well, I think based on the question, at least there's some interest.
Yeah, definitely.
But then we'd obviously need to hear from more customers that is interesting to them. No,
Yeah.
fantastic, Bruno. I hope this helps. One, I think, final thing that I always like to tell customers, and maybe you can shed a little bit of light on that, is that the difference between code generation and code refactoring with MCP, because is in my understanding with Sigrid you can do both.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, indeed. That is a very nice distinction to make, and important indeed. So there is, there are different ways to interact with an MCP server, and especially with the Sigrid MCP server. So you can use it to analyze code, and it's very good at refactoring code. But there's also an important distinction that the MCP server itself, it doesn't generate code by itself. So the LLM generates the code, and the MCP server can then analyze it and provide tailored recommendations on how to fix it. So it's essentially a way that, depending on how you work, you can ask an LLM to write code for you, and an LLM will do it. And then you can use the MCP to analyze that code that was written by an LLM for quality issues and security issues, and then they can be refactored and improved automatically. But with the MCP, you get basically the deterministic compliance checks.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense, and I think so. I think the flexibility is also something that everyone needs to find out for themselves and find their own niche, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Cool.
Indeed, I think I can maybe then bring up the last slide that we had. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Oh, then let me.
Build anticipation. No, and I
Yes,
think
yes,
this is
indeed.
about, like obviously we are the market is progressing, but it also we do not stand still. So I would,
Yes.
yes, now we can at least see it in, and now you need to
Yes.
flip it. Yeah. So where are we
So
going?
exactly. Indeed. So where are we going? So indeed, we are not standing still, for sure. And as we mentioned also during the session, quality is more important than ever now to ensure code quality. And this is basically a sneak peek of the future improvements we'll bring into Sigrid. Essentially, we'll have an AI governance module, where the idea is that you will be able to detect at a portfolio level and system level the percentage of AI generated code, and within that, also the different types of AI, because of course LLMs are one type, but there are many like classical machine learning, etc. So we will offer this kind of dashboard view. Hopefully, during next year for sure it will be in the platform. And also we have a small disclaimer for this, is that AI generated code is often quite tricky to distinguish from human written code, which of course makes it hard to track across your portfolio. And with this AI governance dashboard, Sigrid will be able to identify and monitor AI generated code, and then you will be able to get insights into where it's being used, so specific modules or areas, how it's being used. And thanks to that, of course, this makes it very easy to both manage AI adoption. So are your teams using AI? Are they using it well or not? And at the same time, it helps to ensure that, the quality and security standards are all met even for code that is AI generated.
Yeah, and I think especially on the last part, that's really where the MCP and the Sigrid platform go hand to hand, right?
Yes,
So
definitely.
it's being able to see holistically over your base of all of your applications, like where are we using it, where are we using the MCP service, uh, where have we integrated also the Sigrid MCP, or like where are we using coding systems, where are we integrating with the Sigrid MCP, and are the guardrails that we're setting there actually kind of helping um, and successful. And then you can see that back by kind of the comparison with the scores of the AI generated code versus the human generated code. I think given that we're almost at the end, um, I want to kind of ask you like if there's any final there's actually there's a question that comes in that is almost sort of similar to what I wanted to ask. So there's a
Yeah.
final question to you as someone who has obviously a lot of experience with AI, where you're being asked about the future. Do you foresee a future where most code is written by AI, and is that desirable? Or in other words, is there an optimum amount of code written by AI?
Yeah, that's a tricky question to answer,
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
course, because of course the landscape keeps shifting. But personally, I wouldn't say so. I think the human in the loop and writing code yourself and using your experience and judgment is still going to be critical in the upcoming months and years because as we discussed, AI is not a magic bullet, so it can produce a lot of code, but the key point is that it can also produce a lot of bad code, right? So to produce good code, you need to have your your expertise, your teamwork, your human judgment to be always in the loop and present to to guide the models, to validate what they produce, etc. So I'm pretty sure that humans will still be needed for a very, very long time.
Well, on that note, I want to just say thank you, Bruno, for sharing kind of our MCP server and the journey that we're making and and where we see the future heading and our product.
Thank you. Bye
Uh,
bye. Have a nice day.